started really the sport back in the 1950s are the people who have dominated here at North Wilkesboro, and it is amazing how Victory Lane here has been the private property of about 3 or 4 families. And as we said at the top of the show, experience at North Wilkesboro, for whatever the reasons are, really is paramount.
Dale Earnhardt running in 7th position. Matter of fact, this track was opened back in 1948 as a dirt track, and 10 years later in 1958 it was paved. Of course, the unique thing about this racetrack that we've talked about before, you are going downhill as you head toward turn number 1 and going uphill as you go down the backstretch.
Well, remember the last time we saw the Grand National Division, Buddy Arrington had made the big switch from Chrysler to Ford, and there's Buddy right now getting a lap put on him by Ricky Rudd. Also recall that Buddy was having a little bit of difficulty working with the power steering. Well, he told me this week that the power steering, he's got it solved, and he's happy with it, and he's on the racetrack, and he feels as though he's running, well, about as good as he really wanted to do at this stage of the game. His fan club, you know, I also have been told this week they have stuck with him. They thought in the beginning that maybe it was a bunch of people who were sympathetic to the Chrysler Motor Corporation cause, but when Buddy made the decision to make the change, the fan club has stayed with him. So the fan club is still in place. By the way, Morgan Shepherd was with Buddy this week, helping him practice, and Buddy is back on the racetrack and very happy to be Ford. Now he can say he's driven a Ford lately.
And Buddy is running in 20th position here in the Northwestern Bank 400. The lead is being held by Neil Bonnet. He crosses the line and completes lap number 265. Back with more from North Wilkesboro after this.
Buddy Baker, Richard Petty, and the entire team have been waiting for. The call has gone out, and the STP number 43 is pulling onto pit road. Now, there's a lot of work that'll have to take place under green flag conditions. Petty will have to come out of the car. The belts will have to be adjusted. The radio will have to be re-hooked up to Buddy Baker's helmet. And you can see them trying to lift Richard out of the car now. He gets out in fine fashion, but here's where the work starts. With a sledgehammer, they're going to have to bend open, pry open that seat so a strapping Buddy Baker can replace Richard Petty. Petty is out in a way. He's making his way back for some oxygen. Meanwhile, Baker is trying to pump himself up and get ready for the racing wars. They're adjusting the shoulder harness right now. Baker's bigger in the shoulder area than Petty. They've adjusted the seat belts. They're trying to get everything done with a minimal amount of time. This is precious time, though, because unfortunately it's happened under green flag conditions. Baker is being fitted continuously here. The crew is working now inside the car, trying to clean it out of some of the things that Richard had with him, including some of his rags that he sucks in his mouth during green flag conditions. And they're just moments away from sending Buddy Baker now, instead of Richard Petty, out in old blue. And Bob and Larry, this is what really makes racing so incredible when you can make a change like this. Petty, well, you can see he's just worn out, he's wasted, and that's unfortunate for such an incredible competitor like Richard. But now it's all up to Baker because the car is run so very well and he's losing a lot of laps. This is a tough time for everybody when you've got to come out of a race car because you physically can no longer get the job done.
Quite honestly, Jackie, I'm surprised we haven't seen more of this because it's got to be incredibly hot down there.
Well, the temperatures continue to rise out on the racetrack, and what happens, Bob, is remember that the header pipes travel beneath the floorboards. Now, those header pipes have temperatures as high as 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. That has got to transfer somehow. You know, heat rises, comes up through the cockpit, and it can really raise Cain with a driver. They're having a lot of problems getting Baker situated, and it looks as if they're just moments away from sending him off. A lot longer than they had hoped, but he's out in the race right now.
Well, it looked like they just about started to pull away with one of the crew members still in the car. But there goes Buddy Baker in the STP Pontiac, and it's been quite a while since I've seen that car driven by someone other than Richard Petty.
Yeah, I might point out also, Bob, that it is unusual, despite all of the conditions that Jack outlined, for Richard Petty to need relief in this race. I got a feeling there's something either happening inside the car that is not conducive to these climactic conditions, or something wrong with Richard, because he is in pretty good shape for running these races. He has run many of them. We are not aware of anything specifically wrong with Richard, but It is more than just, I think, the conditions out there, because under very normal circumstances, this would have been no problem, I think. Well, I shouldn't say no problem, but there would not have been a problem for Richard going the distance.
Bonnet leads. He was in 10th position, Richard Petty was, when he came in, and he lost 8 laps while Buddy Baker took over the cockpit.
And up to that time, Richard had only lost 1 lap, so they dropped from 10th probably to about 20th position, but no such problems for Neil Bonnet. He continues to just decimate everybody else out there today, with the maybe possible exception of Allison, Jeff Bodine, Ricky Rudd, and Terry Labonte.
And now this STP pit stop, brought to you by STP Corporation. On the Wilbur and Jack Arute back at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina for the running of the Northwestern Bank 400 7th stop on the Winston Cup Trail for 1985. The leader is Neil Bonnet. Running in 2nd position is Bobby Allison, car number 22, and right behind him at car number 5 is Jeff Bodine. Well, earlier today we had an exciting race live for you on ESPN from Portugal, as Jackie Stewart and John Bizignano brought you the coverage of the Portuguese Grand Prix. An exciting race it was. You see at the beginning how the Lotuses pulled out, with Ayrton Senna showing the way into turn number 1, and Alain Prost, who was the winner of the first Formula One race of the year, falling into 3rd position. Unfortunately, there was rain during the entire race. In fact, heavy rain at times. It caused some problems.
Boston, Virginia, and Jimmy Hensley won for the 2nd time this year. Tommy Houston, however, continues to lead in points.
Continuing to lead the Northwestern Bank 400 is Neil Bonnet from Hueytown, Alabama. We have less than 100 laps to go here. And I'll tell you what, Neil is looking in good shape right now, although Bobby Allison, running in 2nd position, is not too awfully far behind. Jack Arute is down in the pit area with the crew manager for Bobby Allison, Gary Nelson.
Well, Gary Nelson, what do you think? Have you got enough to close in on Neil Bonnet? Are you pleased with the setup?
Well, we're never really satisfied unless we're leading, but the car's been running good. Right now we're trying to decide what to do with we've got one more stop coming up around 50 laps from the end. And it looks like if we change tires, it'll take about 60 laps to make up for the time we lose if the leader doesn't change tires. So we're going to kind of play it by ear. I got a feeling we may just put gas in about 40 or 45 laps to go.
Was there any strategy to your choice of this pit area? This is a departure from years past.
No, we got kind of, our truck got boxed in the morning of sign-in, and he had to wait for all the other trucks to move before he could get in, so this is the best spot we could get, and we're going to do the best we can with what we have.
Well, Bob, you can be sure that should they win this race, this will become a permanent spot at North Wilkesboro for Bobby Allison.
I'll bet that's right. They'll try anything again if they can pull off the victory here at North Wilkesboro, and there is the crew watching Bobby Allison in 2nd position. There you can see the position of his pit. It's up toward turn 4. Normally it's down toward turn number 1. And there is Allison on the racetrack.
Well, Bob, of course, the significant strategy in the minds of all crew members, of course, is how fast can you race in and race out in terms of the pit area. That's why all the top teams seem to have a tendency to cluster down in the direction of the first turn of the pit area. But I'm not so sure at a track like North Wilkesboro here that where the Allison crews are pitted, maybe that's an advantage. I don't know. There's not too much congestion down there with some of the other front-running teams, at least the teams that run up front on a regular basis. But by the way, Ricky Rudd has pulled to the pit area while we've been talking. But where Allison's pitting, who knows? Get down to the end. If everybody has to stop under green flag, if everybody stops at the same time, maybe that will be an advantage to Bobby.
Rudd is shown as 4th place before this pit stop, so this could mean the first of a series of pit stops that we'll be seeing in the next few laps. Ricky Rudd back out onto the racetrack, and there is the leader, Neil Bonnet. Still maintaining the lead over Bobby Allison, Jeff Bodine, Terry Labonte, and Dale Earnhardt. Back with more in a moment. Back at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, Neil Bonnet the leader. If I said going to our commercial break that he was also 5th, I didn't mean that, of course. I meant that Darrell Waltrip was running at 5th position, and we still have 7 cars on the lead lap. You've got to be impressed with the lack of attrition in this race, because as far as we know, we only have 2 cars that have dropped out of competition. And One of them was caused by an accident up in the fourth corner very early on. That was Eddie Burschwale. And then Buddy Baker dropped out of the race with mechanical problems. Other than that, everybody else is still out there.
Bob, if you think back the last couple of years, that's the way it's been here at North Wilkesboro. There's Bobby Gerhardt in the yellow, red, orange, and maroon trim, number 25, the Frederick Chevrolet machine. Bobby, of course, is from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. That is right in the heart of modified and sprint car country. Bobby, who is another one of the second-generation drivers. His father, Bobby Gerhardt Sr., won an awful lot of modified races in an old coupe up there in Pennsylvania. Bobby has been trying to emphasize Grand National racing the past couple of seasons. He always fields a very sanitary-looking machine. You can tell by the paint job of that car. Looks just as good up close as it does from the distance, too. Changed the number this year, maybe to change a little bit of his luck. He seems to get in most of the races he enters, and he was able to qualify here at North Wilkesboro this weekend. One of two dirt trackers, by the way, Ed Sanger from Waterloo, Iowa, the other one to get into today's race.
Well, despite the fact that that car is all nice and clean and shiny, there are a few wheel marks, as you can see there on the left side of the car. But that's a trait of all the race cars that compete on the half mile at North Wilkesboro. We're back inside Kyle Petty's car as he goes to the outside and passes Phil Parsons going into turn number 4, or almost passing Phil Parsons. Now as they come onto the straightaway, Kyle does get around him. He's in 10th place, 3 laps down. Kyle Petty.
Bob, a frustrating day. He started the day out as one of the primary aggressors, one of the predators, if you will, in today's race, but because of the way circumstances have unfolded, he's had to become almost passive as far as the other leaders go. As they approach Kyle, Kyle understands where he is positioned in the race. He doesn't really want to damage the chances of somebody else who's in contention, and he's had to kind of lay off, as a matter of fact. So he will be waiting for another week, but Kyle Petty really showed all of us something today. This young man may well be arriving as one of the real front runners in this league.
80 laps to go, and we expect the last series of pit stops and about 50 laps to go. So within the next 30 laps, we will undoubtedly be seeing the final pit stops of the afternoon. There is Dick May in car number 23, who another one of those drivers who showed up here this weekend and just barely made it into the starting lineup.
Well, Bob, something interesting about that car, you know, the car was entered this weekend with a fellow by the name of Robbie Robertson from Piedmont, West Virginia, as the listed driver. And the interesting aspect about Robbie's performance this weekend, he attempted to get that car into the race on Friday, the first day of qualifying. You know what? This was the first time he had ever driven a Grand National stock car, as well as the first time ever a race car. Robbie Robertson from Piedmont, West Virginia, attempted to get into the field. They put Dick into the car on Saturday, and he was able to qualify. Now, the original plan was for Dick May to step out of that car about halfway through this race. So at this point, because he's not been, of course, running up among the leaders, not exactly certain who's piloting it, but you may be looking at a man running his first weekend ever as a professional race driver.
Dick May was the 30th starter, slowest qualifier, 106.002 miles an hour. Neil Bonnet, the leader, has been leading since lap number 191, and we're now at lap 324. And there's a rather unique situation regarding the engine of this car, Larry.
Well, yeah, the heads that are on this car is something that, of course, all the crews have been experimenting with. It's a constant ongoing battle. And Lee Shepard is a man who was involved in trying to fine-tune and hone heads. And among the selection of heads that the Junior Johnson and the Neil Bonnet crew have experimented with in the past have been heads that were those that were developed by Lee Shepard. Now, nobody knows exactly sure which ones might be in the car because, you know, everybody is borrowing and stealing and trading heads all the time to find just that right combination. But at one point, there was some Lee Shepard research involved in this team.
And you can see that Neil Bonnet is just about to lap the 6th place car of Dale Earnhardt. Let's get down to Jack Arute for some observations.
Bob, it's going to be pit stop poker in about 30 laps. We heard Gary Nelson tell us that he is considering to do a gas and go. Remember 1 year ago when Ricky Rudd was in tremendous command of this race? In a late race caution, they decided not to take on tires. And, you know, the whole brouhaha there, and, you know, went to victory lane. That was Tim Richmond. Well, if this thing goes down